there's four main factors that determine your salary. So first you want to consider that what industry you're in, what city you're located in, what experience you have, either the type of experience or the length of years that you have, and then what credentials do you have, whether it's a certification, a specialty master's, a technical degree, like all of those things actually play into how much you get paid.
Well, hello everyone. I am so excited to welcome you to another episode of the Thank Me Later show where we help you master your money and transform your life. And today, we're going to get some mastery on and we're going to transform in the area of pay me. And as our special guest would say, F you pay me, right? Look at
You
her back
pay
there
me, yes.
snapping. Snap, Jasmine. I'm so excited to welcome back our compensation expert, all things money, all things compensation, all things navigating this whole world of getting employed and really, again, being paid what you deserve, is our special guest, Jasmine. How are you, Jasmine?
Hello, I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I just want to take a minute and brag on you for a minute before we just jump into this conversation. So let me go ahead and brag on
Okay.
you for a minute. So,
Thank
Jasmine
you.
Adams is a human capital expert with a passion for career advancement, pay equity, diversity, and inclusion. Jasmine is the founder and managing partner of Career Convos. She has over 15 years of global management consulting and talent performance, executive recruitment, and compensation experience. Ooh, that's a mouthful, girl, but 15 years in media and entertainment, finance, technology, and industries. And so as I was introducing our segment today, I was referring to her amazing playbook, which is called F You Pay Me. And we'll talk about that a little later through the show, but probably all through the segment, which is really important because, a lot of times we need help. We want to do something, we need a coach. And Jasmine has that playbook to guide you through the whole process of, again, knowing how to ask, when to ask, and again, getting paid, getting compensated, which you absolutely positively deserve. So, Jasmine, I
Mhm.
want to take a minute, just kind of set the stage with you for a second. um,
Okay.
you know, um, I've always noticed women in particular always seem to be a little timid in asking. You know,
Mhm.
um, y- we all know that the data that women still in 2024 are not paid equally as men. And I still
Mhm.
think we have that fear of bringing up that conversation and asking, let's talk about that a little bit. Just kind of in
Mhm.
the
Mhm.
context of the different sexes. How have you noticed, how men approach this topic versus how women may approach this topic?
Yeah, sure, sure. I think it's all about how you've been socialized. And I appreciate you bringing up the playbook. One of the very first pages in the playbook asks you to take time to think about um what you associate with negotiating and with money. Is it greed? Is it positive? And all of those were uh, emotions denoted when you were coming up that you may or may not be aware of. And that plays into how you show up and how you ask for your worth. And so to your question around men and women and how they navigate having this conversation, typically or stereotypically, girls are taught to be nice and demure and be a team player, and as opposed to boys are taught to be competitive and direct. And so I think that comes out, especially when it's focused on asking for money and frankly having a conversation potentially going back and forth around either a base salary or what I like to call non base compensation negotiation levers, whether it's PTO, whether it's a higher title, whether it's a different start date. All of these components are part of the negotiation of your total compensation package. And so what I remind women and minorities is that systemically, we have always been behind. We have been set back. So whatever you're getting paid right now, you really have to think critically about, is this your fair pay in the market, regardless of your, race, sex, creed, sexual orientation, but what is the fair market value for this job? And that's where we want to start the
Mm.
conversation.
And I love that. Just looking at that objectively, removing the emotion from that and just saying,
Mm-hmm.
again, no matter who I am, where I went to school, for this role, how much am I supposed to be paid for this role?
Right.
And I
Mm-hmm.
appreciate that. So, Jasmine, for my first set of questions, I'm really more so looking through the lens of someone who just started at a particular company. So
Mm-hmm.
let's assume this is not someone who's been there, like 5 or 10 years. This is someone, let's say maybe like 2 years or under in a particular role.
Okay.
And so for someone who's, again, fairly new to the environment, when is it appropriate? When is it time to reevaluate your compensation, or i.e., ask for more?
Right. Right. I have two things to say to that. The first one, and again, I'll refer back to my playbook, is in the very first pages, we have a reminder that um, you are more likely to be paid more coming in the door versus waiting in your role and then trying to negotiate for more. So
Mm,
hopefully that gives people a little bit more of an incentive and a little bit more courage to, at the onset, have that difficult conversation versus saying, okay, well, I'll just get the job and then I'll figure out if I can get more later on.
mm,
Because once you're in the role, you are potentially locked into a pay band, into, the 3% merit increase. The company has all of these freezes and restrictions and whatever else versus coming in the door. They need someone to do that job. You've gotten all the way through this process because typically, if you're talking about pay, you're at the very final stages, or sorry, not talking about negotiating pay, you're at the final stages. So that's the first thing that I would remind people. But if you are in the job, like you said, about 1 or 2 years in, and you're realizing that you should revisit what your compensation is. There is, and I'm gonna scroll through because I have the playbook up in front of me. A page on It's page 14, and it's called "Determine the Timing." And in this playbook, we talk to people who are out in the job market interviewing for roles, but also people who are full time in their company and hoping to negotiate more. And so that latter circumstance, hoping to negotiate more, already in a role, is on page 14. And the main call out about this page is your company already has a set timing to review your performance and or provide pay increases.
right.
And so a lot of people will say, oh, I asked my boss for more, and they said no. But did you think about, there's a pot of money, and in that pot of money, there are certain checks and balances that the company leadership goes through to
Right.
understand how they'll parse it out to give people an increase. So when does that happen? When does that process happen? And therefore, what is the right timing for you to have that conversation? So that's typically my first recommendation, is to think critically about when in the company does that happen.
Right. And Jasmine, when I hear you say that, to me, it just really means you need to understand how things work within your company. Like you
Mhm.
said, knowing that calendar is going to be critically, knowing the calendar in the process is going to be critically important to that. You're right. You
Yes.
probably are going to get an automatic no when if you should be doing this in January, but you're talking to these people in July. Probably not
Right.
going to happen for you.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So let's
No
talk
prob
about some common mistakes people make when they want to ask for more money and you see
Okay.
them fumbling the ball doing what?
Mhm. Great question. So, a client, stands out in my mind when you give that question. So I had a client who works in a nonprofit, and part of her role every year was to raise money from, donors, constituents, etc. So she wanted to go to her boss and ask for $5,000 more. and she was really hesitant to do that because it is a, you know, a nonprofit. They're all there for the cause. Um, and but I said, so let's think about this from a business case standpoint. What is the value add that you are bringing in terms of either metrics or dollars? So if you are bringing, you know, X number of people through a program, how many dollars does each of, you know, the people you're bringing through the program, how many dollars does that pull into the entire nonprofit? Um, Alternately, when you're raising money from constituents, how much money have you raised? Is it more than 5,000? Oh, it is. Here are numbers that you can put behind your ask to help validate why you're asking for more money. There should never be a, hey, boss, I think I should get a raise. Oh, really? Tell me more. And you're like, because that doesn't help. So there's a couple of pages in the playbook. I'll call out one specifically. It's page 12, and it's called Build Your Case with Metrics. And that's the page that I use with her to say, okay, think about all of the activities that you do in your daily job, and
Right.
let's try to put metrics towards it to help you with articulating why the raise that you're asking for makes sense.
Right. And Jasmine, when I hear you say that, it's like the burden of proof is on you. You know, you can't expect
Mhm.
your company or your boss or your manager to just remember or know. Like, you know, you got to
Right.
prove it. You want it. You need to be able to
Hmm.
exert the effort and certainly prove it. When we
Hmm.
were talking a little while ago, you made mention to PTO and title, and what
Yes.
I hear you referring to are other things other than compensation that can have significant value.
Yes.
Can you talk
Yes.
about what some of those things are? Because I don't want people to forget about those things in the context of them negotiating for a new role, or even
Mhm.
potentially if they are within a current role and want to ask for more, like what could be part of that ask?
Mhm, mhm. No, that's a great question, and to your point, when I'm speaking with clients, I call them compensation negotiation levers. So this isn't, necessarily, you know, more money in a base salary or or in a bonus.
Okay.
These are things outside of that. So on page, 10 and 11 in my playbook, I have 2 pages and 60 different examples, and
Wow.
this isn't even the entire list, right? You never know what makes sense for your specific situation.
Right.
But there's all types of compensation levers that you can pull to help move the conversation along if you do hit a stalemate in you know, asking for more in your base or asking for a bonus. And so examples of those, so you mentioned your title, your start date, but also some of the things that people don't think about is we are in a remote, a hybrid, a digital, you know, environment now. So if your company says, okay, fine, I'll cover your cell phone, all of your internet, an entire home office, you know, set up with desk, chair, multiple monitors, you know, commuting to the office 2 days a week, you know, all of these different things that may have not been part of the original package, then those are negotiation levers where when you have those things, they may satisfy some of the needs that you have to be able to show up as your best self at work. So it's not always about the bottom line. And frankly, I challenge my clients to think about, and I did this with the one that I just mentioned who worked at the nonprofit. I said, okay, if you get $5,000 more a year, how much is that? How much more is that actually in your pocket?
Okay. Yeah.
So 5,000 divided by 12,
Right.
and then after taxes,
Right.
couple hundred.
Right.
Versus you have a 5-year-old daughter, what if you could actually, you know, work remote 2 or 3 days a week, or
Absolutely.
you could have a full home office set up, and she was like, "Wow, that's true." So you also have to again think through the business case of how much are you asking for and what difference does it really make in your life, especially compared to some of the other things that may not have such a tangible you know, financial gain, but could make a difference in your day-to-day working life.
And for those of you who are listening, to know that Jasmine's playbook has a list of over 60 different um, compensation offerings that you need to be considering, because again, we know the top, pay time off, maybe some education, but you really want to make sure that you take a look at that list, because in this negotiation you want to know what resonates with you, your personal life, what resonates with you financially, and what will also be a benefit to your company, because
Mhm,
you taking that extra time again to get a certain certificate or go to certain conferences, that
mhm,
could really
mhm,
benefit your company and benefit you as well. So again, I would
mhm.
make that investment, and we're going to talk about the promo code, your Thank Me Later promo code, for you to be able to get your 10% off your FU Pay Me playbook for sure. All right, Desmond, I have a few more questions for you. Um,
Sure, sure.
when you're talking about research, and I know
Mhm,
you and I have talked about this at length, that it's good for you to have an idea of what you want to be paid, but certainly you need to know, are you on par with what your peers or other folks are getting paid with that same role?
mhm,
How do you find that
mhm.
information out though? Where is that data?
Yeah, I completely love this question. And I understand that people, are really frustrated and don't know where to start. They go to Google and type in IT manager pay, right? And you'll get a million different sources. So that may or may not be accurate. So the two things that I'll call out in that I advise my clients, and it's in the negotiation playbook. On page 7, I remind people that there's four main factors that determine your salary. So first, you want to consider that what industry you're in, what city you're located in, what experience you have, either the type of experience or the length of years that you have, and then what credentials do you have, whether it's a certification, a specialty master's, a technical degree, like all of those things actually play into how much you get paid. So then when you start researching, you can also use a lens to say, actually this falls more in line with the jobs that I'm looking at. So for example, if you're an IT manager at a nonprofit or at Coca-Cola, your job could almost look the exact same depending on your department, but your pay may be very different because it's for profit versus nonprofit. And so that's a major consideration. But in terms of finding the resources and finding what those numbers are, on page 6 of the negotiation playbook, I have recommended sources. I have 8 different sources that people can go to that will take you directly to, okay, how do I know how much this job should pay me in the market? And the last thing that I want to mention is there's legislation now across different states around either um, jobs having to put a salary range as part of the job posting, or if you get into live conversations in the initial interviews, um, companies not being able to ask what your current salary is. And so I'm going to go to that first thing that I mentioned, the roles sharing what the range is. Now, the range may be really wide, what you'll find, but at least it gives you a starting point of where that job may fall. And then what I advise to people is look for other jobs in, again, that same city, that same industry, that same title. And if you can find maybe 4 or 5 that actually list the range, and you can find that on Glassdoor, you can set up Google alerts, you can find that on LinkedIn, then it helps you really hone in to say, okay, this role would probably fall between this number and this number. And there's some companies and institutions that legally they have to name it. So, for example, I had a client that was applying to MIT. So, like, universities actually have to post some, if they're public, I think, have to post what their range is.
Right.
And so he was looking for an IT manager role for MIT. And so it was very clear. I think it was, that's in Boston. I think it was between 120 and 140. So you may not be working at a university, but that helps you to understand, okay, if I'm in the Northeast and it's IT and it's, these responsibilities, then that can start to give me a realistic range of what I should expect for this role in terms of pay.
That's super helpful. Thank you, Jasmine. One more
Hmm.
question before we don't I don't have a live question for you today, but I had a question submitted to us on the Thank Me Later
Sure.
hotline that I'm going to read to you.
Yes.
But one question before we go to that. So, are there any particular negotiation tactics or strategies that you recommend that can help people maximize their salary when it comes to the job offer stage? So, we're in the job offer stage. Like, how do I know that I'm getting all that I can get without,
All
appearing
the
to be,
coins.
I want it all, but
All
also
the coins.
without appearing to be, reckless or ill informed?
Yep, yep. So one of the things that I'll share with folks is under my company career convos, I have an arm that does executive search and recruitment for Black owned media companies. And so I am actively out there uh basically sitting on both sides of the table. I'm recruiting top talent and helping companies find their next executive, and then I'm also coaching people in order to get those roles. So some of the tips, well, I'll say the first mistake that I often see is when I ask people, and this is in the initial screen. I'm going to lean in and let everybody really hear this. This is the very first conversation that I have with people, not the fourth, not you've done interviews and now it's time to talk about the very first conversation. I ask people, what is your expected compensation for the role? 80% of folks respond. I guarantee you they haven't done research. If they have, that's fine. But what they don't ask me is, well, what is the budget for the role?
Mm,
What is the range for the role? That's the number one question. That is, if you're not asking that
right.
in the very first conversation, you are making a mistake.
That's
Now,
huge.
let's be clear. I may not be able to share the budget. I may not know the budget. For startups, they may be like, I don't know what it is. Find me the best person, right? There's not always a rule, a hard and fast rule that if you ask that question, you'll get an answer. But guess what? Most companies had to greenlight this role. They had to think about how much they
No
were going to
question.
pay it. And so they have some type of budget in mind for the role. Always ask that. That's rule number one. I'm going to pause there and let that sink in. Any?
Right. I'm like,
Yes.
okay, got to know what the
Yeah.
budget is, folks.
Yes. Ask that first. And then the second mistake that I see people making is they are not, as they progress through the interview process, they're not asking questions to help I guess inform what their full compensation should be. So for example, um uh what I like to call, what is it, in employee engagement benefits, right? So if you need to know, okay, is there unlimited vacation, or do you do reimbursement for elder care and child care and all of these things, that when you're thinking about the full compensation, ask questions at the end of every interview to understand what the company offers if you don't see it on the website or if it hasn't come up. Because one thing that companies will tell you is they are talking to you about full compensation, not just your base salary. So if you come back and say, well, you're only going to pay me X dollars and I want 10,000 more, they're going to say, well, technically, each year you're getting $25,000 in benefits. You didn't realize that,
Right.
right? And then you have a hole in your conversation versus being able to kind of collect that information along the way and then make a more informed decision on how much more do you want to ask when you get to that final negotiation conversation during the offer.
And I appreciate what you're saying, Jasmine, as an employer, because we're looking at total
Hmm.
compensation, not just what people receive pay wise, but that
Yep.
entire package. So if you approach
Hmm.
me that way and you're being thoughtful about that, I kind of feel like
Hmm.
you're not only thinking about yourself, but you're also thinking about the employer and the company too. And even if they're a major company with a bajillion dollars, said department still has a set budget. Period. And
Yep.
so just to know that again, you're approaching this from both sides, I think that might give you a competitive advantage for sure.
Yes. Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
Thank you for that question.
All right. So I have a question from the Thank Me Later hotline that I want to ask you.
Okay.
So this is from Stacy, who is in Savannah, Georgia. And Stacy
Okay.
says, I am a nurse that's been at my hospital for 5 years. I would like to
Mhm.
make more money, and I've been looking at other hospitals, but I like where I am. How do I go to my current supervisor and ask for more money without the awkwardness or the rejection?
Mhm, mhm. And first of all, Stacy, thank you for your question. And I really relate to this because part of what keeps people from negotiating is just the awkwardness, the
Discomfort. Yep.
anticipation, the anxiety
Yep.
around it.
For sure.
Um, Mhm, mhm, and so, I would respond to Stacy, with 2 options. The first option is, if she's been looking at other hospitals, she can technically interview for other roles and get an offer letter, and then she has black and white proof of what her worth is in the market. And just because she gets an offer letter doesn't mean that she has to accept the role, but it is bargaining power, negotiation power to go to her current leadership and say, I really want to stay here.
Absolutely.
I'm I'm trying to understand what my worth is in the market. I've been in this role for X number of years. I do know that it's time for a pay adjustment. In order for me to get an accurate assessment of what my worth is in the market, here's some offer letters. Can we talk about how we can get me closer to this amount? Right? And the reason why I say how we can get me closer is because if she really doesn't want to leave, then how we can get closer is um almost like it's a humble, it's a peace offering.
Right.
It's not match this or I'm gone. It's,
Right.
look, I want to stay here, but I have proof. So let's work together. So I think that's option number one. Option number two is going back to what I said earlier around understanding the timing to have the conversation, right? And so you can decrease awkwardness if you know that, all right, during my annual performance or mid annual performance review or conversation, we can tie how I'm doing with, is my compensation accurate right now? And how do I know if I'm getting a raise or a promotion? All of that comes together very organically and naturally where it doesn't feel as kind of out of pocket. And so it's going back to, I'm going to pull it up, page 14 in the playbook that helps you understand kind of when is that happening in your organization. And then the other piece is on page 12 in the playbook. That page is around writing down your impact, your value, your accomplishments, but basically putting metrics towards it. And so if she is able to not only just have the conversation of, hey, I think an increase in pay makes sense for me, then we're talking about, what value is she bringing to the table to go along with the increase that makes sense. And so it's not only using the recommended resources that I mentioned on page 6 and doing her research of what her value is in the market, but then also talking about what she's done specifically to show that she is kicking butt in her job, and it makes sense for her to have that conversation.
Yeah. No, thank you. Thank you for that response. And again, I really
Mhm.
appreciate your approach, Jasmine, because I love the strategy. It's all about preparation. You got to
Mhm.
do your work ahead of time. You
Mhm.
know what I mean? Do
Mhm.
your work, know the metrics, know how you've moved the needle, and
Mhm.
this makes it easier for a company to make a decision of giving you more compensation or not. If you're just asking for more money without any proof, you're putting the onus on your manager or the department head, and they already have enough work to do. Please don't give them any
Mhm.
more work for sure.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
before we jump into a second set of questions, I just wanted to highlight some resources for our listeners, just so that way they'll know how to begin to do some of this work and research that we keep referring to. So, I'm going to
Yep.
mention a couple things that you've already shared, but again, please jump in
Okay.
if I'm leaving anything out. Certainly, you have mentioned Glassdoor.
Mhm.
You've mentioned LinkedIn, humongous tool, y'all. Not just to connect with folks and have a cute little resume out there, but there's a lot of information out there, a lot of ways to learn on LinkedIn right now too. So please lean into
Mhm.
LinkedIn. Um, uh, I have had the honor to interview Jasmine several other times. So within the Thank Me Later community, there's some previous content available that you can definitely use that as part of your strategy to prepare yourself. So lean into the Thank Me Later community. And then, of course, Jasmine's resources. Her website is Career Convos, and of course, you can engage with her across all of those platforms. But you keep referring to this playbook, the FU Pay Me Salary Negotiation Playbook. And we do have a special promo code. It's Thank Me Later, one word. So if you go to her website, use the Thank Me Later promo code. You can use that for all of the merchandise and products that are available on her site, in addition to the playbook. So, any resources that I left out, anything that you'd like to highlight for folks?
Sure. I mean, one thing I'll call out, in addition to Glassdoor and LinkedIn is, Payscale, and I like that one because, they also do, research every year and publish reports about, pay equity, and different, compensation ranges across industries. So Payscale is a good resource as well.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing that resource. All right,
Mhm.
now going to jump back into a few questions I have for you. When we've talked in the past, you have referenced the 5 W's of negotiation. The
Yes.
5 W's. So, can you break those down for us?
Yes, definitely. I'm pulling up, let's see, in my playbook so I can have them in front of me. So I'm actually going to start with who because we haven't hit on that yet. So one of the 5 W's is who. And that one, a lot of people leave out because uh, who refers to who is the person who will actually green light or approve your salary increase request. A lot of people say, "Oh, I went to my boss. I talked to my boss." Your boss may not have anything to do with it. Your boss may have to then make your case to their boss and then the division vice president and then the partner over the region and then so who is the person that actually says yes, this person, whether it's Stacy we talked to earlier, or submitted the question earlier, can actually have the increase that they're requesting. So who is really important because then that also helps you tailor your business case, your
Right.
argument. It's very different if you're talking to someone who sits next to you versus someone who has a purview across the entire department or country or whatever it might be. So who is really important. So who is number one? Um, the next one is when. And so this kind of goes back to the timing that I talked about in your organization of when should these conversations be happening in terms of the natural progression of when does your company's fiscal year end? It may not be December 31st. There's companies that fiscal year ends April 1st or June 1st. And what that means is that's when they close all of the books and then figure out, okay, now what money do we have for the next year? So that win piece is really important. So you need to understand, do you have these conversations right before they close all the books? Do you have the conversation right when they're opening the new books for the new year? So that's all customized to your organization. The next one is where, and that is refers to and I think I mentioned this earlier, kind of the four factors that help determine your compensation. And so, just because a company, so for example, if there's a big tech company, if it's Microsoft and it's headquartered in San Francisco and that's a tier one city, and so you expect to get, top dollar for the job. But if you're working remotely and you're based in Mississippi, then you might be in a tier C city and the cost of living is not the same. And so you have to understand kind of how your location or where you are actually connects to the compensation piece. And Janai, I actually need to. I'm looking for the other two W's.
Right.
I actually don't have those other two in front of me, so I'll as they come to me, I'll bring those up to finish out that thought.
No. And one thing too that I remember in some of our previous conversations in the context of the where, um, you and I have talked about physically where as well. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like,
Mhm.
where are you? Is this a phone call? Is this face to face in somebody's
Mhm.
office? Are you all on Zoom? Like what does that really look like? Where are you literally going to have that conversation? Because how you prepare could
Yes.
potentially be different. As an employer, I'm the person when I'm talking about money, definitely want to have that conversation with you, preferably face to
Mhm.
face. And even in this
Mhm.
virtual environment, I think there's a time and a place for that. But again,
Mhm.
if you work with me, then you need to learn. Again, what when you're in Rome, you need to do as the Romans do and adjust
Yeah.
yourself to what the typical environment is within your organization.
That's a good point, and also even, as I, may have mentioned, the last page in this playbook is a sheet that you can actually take out and take with you into the conversation, and so
Right.
to your point about where,
Hmm.
do you need to print it out and have it in your portfolio, in your
Literally.
notes as you're having an in-person conversation? Is it digital next to the screen because you're
Right.
having it on Zoom? So that's a great, call out. I will say, I think another one of the W's is what. So what exactly are you asking for?
For
So
sure.
that takes us back to our conversation around negotiation levers. Are we just focusing on base salary or bonus? Or are we focusing on non-base base salary levers, which might be, like you said, paying for training or a new ergonomic desk for your work office or for your home office, and so those are some of the components of like what exactly am I asking for and how much?
Yeah. Any other tips or advice in the context of negotiation that you want to share with folks?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the biggest thing that I want to underscore to everyone is to practice all of this out loud. And so it's great to get the playbook and write everything down and to do your research and to have all of these notes. But if you actually don't practice with a trusted friend or a family member or, even your pet, your cat, but just say these words out loud, you might be surprised at how long-winded you are or how you might trip over something or how when you say it out loud, it doesn't stack up the way it did in your head. So the final, and most important step is actually say it out loud after you've done all the preparation.
Mhm. One thing, Jasmine, I was just thinking about from when you were with us a year or so ago, you kept
Mhm.
referencing the statement, shoot your shot. And
Yes.
I really appreciated that because, again, we primarily are talking to women, and a lot of women are afraid, to shoot their shot.
Mhm.
But,
Mhm.
that planned shot. And I remember sharing some feedback with you. We had someone within our Thank Me Later community. I don't remember what profession that she was in. And she took her shot, and I think her salary increase was about 25%, just literally
Yes.
by following the advice that you have provided. So
Mhm.
she was shocked, thrilled, happy. But, again, I'm thrilled. I'm like, who in the heck thinks that you could get a 25% raise? I mean, that is dope,
Mhm.
crazy, and amazing. But she
Mhm.
was prepared to shoot her shot.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
all that emotion, I deserve this. They need to pay me. That might be true. And you still must be prepared. There's a process
Correct.
that you have to respect and follow. So I want to make
Mhm.
sure that people don't lose sight of that.
And I love that you called that out. One of the things I want to remind people about shooting your shot is sometimes this is a process. Compensation negotiation may not be one static conversation. And then at the end, oh, you have more.
Right.
It may be a series of conversations. It may say, not this year, but next year, or
Right.
not this, performance cycle, but let's revisit in 6 months. So part of shooting your shot is also setting the stage for you to get what you ultimately want, which may not happen in the blink of an eye or in the completion of one conversation. So I think that's important too.
Yeah. I think that certainly helps people manage their expectations as well.
Yes. Mhm.
So as we get ready to close, wanted to ask you a question. So
Sure.
we want to know your thank me later financial tips. So finish this sentence for us.
Okay.
If you blank, you will thank me later.
If you shoot your shot, you will thank me later.
I know that's
I
right.
think it's very apropos. It just came up. But the worst that the person or whoever you're working with can say is no.
Right.
So always ask. It never hurts to ask. The worst they can say is no, we got to keep you here, and then you can make a decision from there. So
Right.
always shoot your shot, and you'll
Yeah.
thank me later.
Jasmine, if they shoot their shot, they might, instead of just thanking you, they might owe you a commission too, girl. You know, there might be
Right.
there might be some commission involved there for sure. Um, One more thing. So, thank me later. We are rooted in legacy, all things legacy. So, when you hear the word legacy or leaving a legacy, what does that mean to you?
Yeah, yeah. Leaving a legacy is so powerful because it's thinking beyond you in your current state, even in your future state, but for generations to come. So I think leaving a legacy is about building something that not only you can be remembered by, but that is a benefit or a platform for future generations.
Yeah, no, that's for sure. So let's talk about the call to action for our listeners. Number one, you got to do your research. You're going to have to schedule some
Yes.
time to get some research done for sure. And then again,
Hmm.
just be very intentional about your ask and your timeline. Jasmine has
Hmm.
referenced some of these W's here to help you prepare for your negotiation. So that is
Hmm.
certainly your call to action. Jasmine, I want to take a minute and just highlight some of the resources again so people, in case they missed it earlier, that they can reference those. You talked about Payscale, Glassdoor, LinkedIn, the Thank Me Later community, and of course, FU Pay Me, the Salary Negotiation Playbook, which is by Jasmine. You can go to her website, Career Convos. You can use the promo code Thank Me Later. That's all one word, and receive 10% off. But you're going to need some prep. You're going to need some guidance to help you shoot your shot. And that
Yes.
playbook is here to guide you along that. So please make that investment to help you prepare for that. And then, of course, you can continue to engage with Jasmine across all platforms. LinkedIn, her website, Instagram, Career Convos is the way that you can connect with her. And then please, we want you to continue to engage with us. So on social media, at TML Money, and of course at Jini Thornton. You can continue to listen to other episodes. You can go to thankmelatershow.com for that. And of course, we need you to like and subscribe and share. We want to make sure that you're sharing this very valuable information with folks. And thank you so much for tuning into the Thank Me Later show, where we help you master your money and transform your life. Jasmine, we are eternally grateful for you. And thank you for being a friend of Thank Me Later and making
Of
sure
course.
we're out here shooting our shot, getting to this money, girl. We appreciate you.
Let's get to the money,
I
get
know,
our coins.
I know, that's right. I see you. I see you out there. Thank you again, Jasmine. We appreciate your help
Thank
and all this
you.
helpful information.